Welcome to Kermode Uncut, where I'm doing my top 10 best and worst films of the year. Last week I did numbers 10 to 6 of best and worst. This week it's numbers 5 to 1, starting off with the best. At number 5, 13th, a very, very powerful documentary by Ava DuVernay, the director of Selma, about slavery and imprisonment in the US. It's an incendiary piece of work, a really well-argued, polemical documentary. My only reservation about it is it was funded by Netflix and therefore hardly opened in any cinemas in the UK. In fact, we did a blog here at Kermode Uncut about how cinemas in the UK wanted to show the film. Audiences wanted to see it in cinemas, but you had to see it on Netflix. It's a shame because, for my money, it's the 5th best film of the year.
The loophole was immediately exploited. What you got after that was a rapid transition to a mythology of black criminality.
At number 4, Son of Saul, Laszlo Nemesh's soul-shaking Holocaust drama, which somehow found a way of confronting unthinkable events in dramatic form without exploiting them. It was a film in which the form and the story were perfectly matched with that very, very close 4:3 frame. A really extraordinary piece of work, which quite rightly went on to win the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. Now, once again, when it came to the Oscars, it was the foreign language film category in which the really interesting, groundbreaking movie work was happening, which leads us very nicely to number 3. So at number 3, Embrace of the Serpent, Colombia's first nomination for Best Foreign Language Film at the Oscars. It's an extraordinary, dreamy, evocative movie shot in very, very moody monochrome, telling two different stories of explorers going into the Amazon, but seeing their journey from the other side, from the perspective of the indigenous population. I mean, imagine Fitzcarraldo or Apocalypse Now somehow turned on their heads. It's a movie which was completely without precedent as far as I was concerned. I knew nothing about it other than it had been nominated for the Oscar, and I was completely swept away by it. It's a film which stayed with me for weeks afterwards, and I have yet to meet somebody else who saw it who didn't think it was every bit as magical as I did. Number 3, Embrace of the Serpent. So, into the top 2, and one of the great things about 2016 is how many great home-produced movies there were. And at number 2, one of those, Notes on Blindness, an extraordinary adaptation of the memoirs of John Hull, a theologian who documented his loss of sight, recorded it in audio cassettes, which were then turned into a book. In the case of the film, they've taken those audio recordings along with interviews and got actors to lip-sync to them, much in the way of, for example, Clio Barnard's work in The Arbor. I didn't know much about Notes on Blindness before I saw the film, but I found it a completely overwhelming sensory experience. It's a film which explored something which you'd think that cinema would struggle with, but does it in a brilliant way. It's also a film which was reversioned. I think there are about 3 different versions in which the soundtrack was mixed for differently sighted audiences. It's a film which reached out to its audience, which really tried to engage the maximum number of people and did so quite brilliantly. It's a breathtaking piece of work. A work which really stands as a piece of art, but also as a piece of philosophy, and, for my money, a piece of theology. Notes on Blindness is number 2 in my list of the very best films of 2016.
Everything was drifting away. How could this happen to me? Who had the right to deprive me of the sight of my children at Christmas time?
Which brings us to the number 1 spot. And I have to say, when you look at films like Notes on Blindness and Embrace of the Serpent, what could possibly be better than them? Well, in my own personal opinion, the best film released in the UK in 2016 was in fact a British production, set in Tehran, shot in Farsi, filmed in Jordan, but produced here in the UK. Babak Anvari's brilliant Under the Shadow. Under the Shadow is a story of a mother and a daughter in a Tehran apartment during the Iran-Iraq War, being terrorized on the one hand by the fearful events happening outside in the real world, but also being tormented apparently by a jinn spirit, a spirit of the air. I love this film in so many ways. On the one hand, It refers to movies like The Devil's Backbone, the Guillermo del Toro film. It also owes a debt to some extent to Polanski, and there's a little bit of Dark Water, the Hideo Nakata film, in there. But I think the genius of what Babak Anvari has done is that he's made a film which is distinctly his own. He has taken all those elements, all that cine literacy, all that genre literacy, and turned it into something completely new. The film was selected to represent the UK at the Oscars in the foreign language film competition category, and it is a genuinely international work. But I think what I love about it so much is that on the one hand it is a horror film, and as you know I'm a huge horror fan, but it's so much more than that. It's a film about politics, it's a film about family, it's a film about gender, it's a film which, for my money, has a very clear feminist agenda. It is made by a filmmaker of whom we were going to expect brilliant things in the future. It's a stripped down budget, a very small, very tight production in which everything is used to the full. It's a superb piece of work, a really breathtakingly magical piece of work. I'm so delighted to have seen it, and it's my favourite film of 2016. So there we have it, my rundown of the top 10 films released in the UK in 2016. At joint 10th place, Amorous Santi's United Kingdom and Mia Hansen Loves Things to Come. At 9, the Japanese animation Your Name. At 8, I, Daniel Blake, second Palme d'Or winner for Ken Loach. At 7, Almodovar's Giulietta. At 6, Room, with an Oscar-winning performance by Brie Larson. At 5, Ava DuVernay's 13th. At number 4, Son of Saul, winner of the Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film. At number 3, Embrace of the Serpent. At number 2, the extraordinary Notes on Blindness. And in with a bullet, at number 1, Babak Anvari's Under the Shadow. That's my rundown of the best films of the year. Stay tuned for the next Kermode Uncut, in which I do numbers 5 to 1 of the worst of 2016.